condition that she's in. She's such a spiritual prayer warrior, dedicated to my father. Like, it's crazy. According to her own siblings, according to my mom's own siblings, no man except for my father, I don't know now, but no man has ever seen my mom naked except for my father. So,
yeah, good, great. I'm really excited to introduce our next speaker. Lanre owning Bingde Bay. Really funny short story. Lanre and I just realized that we actually grew up within like 1 square block of each other, on intersecting streets, and we went to competing high schools around the same time. So really funny small world. Please give Lanre a warm welcome. We're so excited to hear from you.
thank you so much, Christin. Appreciate you guys. Let me just lean this here. Funny story, this was made while I was in prison. The eagle, I mean, if you guys understand what the eagle stands for, when you're incarcerated, the eagle it symbolically means, the truth and freedom. So I had a few guys work on this for me, because the prison I was in at that point, I think it was my 5th year of being incarcerated, a place called Fembroke, on like maximum security prison, which I was in for 2 years. Fembroke, you have access to different things, and woodworking and workshop was one of them. So the actual staff was done by some guys in the wood shop, but the eagle head, I did it myself through a class that I took in carving. So yeah, I'm just gonna leave this here. Thank you guys for having me. Really appreciate being here. I heard you guys been here for a few days, so I don't want to bore you. So hopefully you guys, hear me out. Again, my name is Lanre Onigile Bay, and appreciate you guys for having me. Again, John Howard, thank you guys for having me. I'm gonna start. Christine mentioned that I write a little, so writing is something I really picked up while I was incarcerated. Obviously writing my daughter, but also I started writing poems, and since post-prison I've started writing scripts too, and books and so on and so forth. But one of the poems I wrote is called Words Wield Power. I just want to start off with that. Words wield power, a magic untold, spoken with intent. They take hold, creating a world from what's said, shaping our reality with threads. A spell is cast with every word. The truth or lies that we've heard, they hold the power to uplift or destroy, filling our lives with love and with joy. The media knows the spell they weave, broadcasting their message to make us believe. Controlling our thoughts with every word, shaping our reality so we are unheard. But we hold the power to break the spell, choosing our words with care to dispel, creating a world that we want to see, filled with love, hope, and possibility. So be mindful of the words you say, for they shape your reality in every way. Speak with love, let kindness reign, and watch as your world is forever changed. So, my first book that I published is the 27th Letters. Again, that was based on letters I wrote my daughter while I was incarcerated. And the catchphrase for that book was words cast spells. And I feel like writing those letters paved the way for me winning my appeal, because by the time my appeal was heard, I feel like even the CEOs that had me incarcerated wanted to see me go home, because every time I wrote a letter, they have to read it. So eventually, seeing those letters over the years made them root for me in the long run. And I had CEOs tell me, man, there's something different about you, something, don't worry. I'll tell you another story. Before I got convicted, I was in the East Detention. You know where that is, that's in the area. So I was in the East Detention, and I used to go to Bible studies. You know, some people do it just to get away and, you know, take a break from the range. But growing up, as you guys will hear later on, growing up, this is something my mother taught me. You know, I had a little book. I remember when I was a child, I had a book called My Little Book of Bible Stories. So I was very, very familiar with the Bible. So going to Bible study was nothing new to me, you know. It was right up my alley. One of the volunteers who shows up one day as they were leaving, and you know, it's customary for me to, you know, bid people well and say, "Get home safe," you know, "Get home safe." Not thinking nothing of me saying bye to her, and then the very next week, next week during Bible study, this lady came straight to me and she said to me, "You know, when I left the jail the other day, I almost got into a car accident, and I remember what you said to me about getting home safe." And she said to me, "I don't know what's going on in your life, but God has a plan for you." So little signs like that were given to me along the way, various signs. I could go on and on about it, but I just want to get into my story. Finding purpose in the midst of struggle. This is about looking and surviving the storm in your life. The storm provides. It's an honor to stand before you today. I want to start by grounding this hour in this theme to define so many moments of my life. The storm provides. It might not feel like it when you are in the thick of it, but the storm, with all its pain, uncertainty, and disruption, has within it the very things we need for growth, for transformation, and for clarity. Let me take you through some storms I've survived, some that nearly broke me, and show you that they eventually provided for my very own hero's journey. As you guys already know, through my bio that was written, I was born in Nigeria without my father being present during those early years. Although his absence was painful, it created a space for my mother to step up fully into her own power. Before I go on, let me just take you to a time and place. We're talking about late 70s, a country commonly known as a third world country. She's a woman. Like, you guys already know how hard it is for women in general, even in first world countries. So imagine how hard it is for her being a single mother. Well, she was not single. My dad was already in Canada. He already had migrated. So she had a lot of hurdles I could imagine that she had to overcome just being, you know, being a woman, being an entrepreneur, being a successful entrepreneur. So she became a successful entrepreneur, and because of her drive, I was able to attend a private school. So this is how successful my mother was. Like, I went to a private school in Nigeria. I often say things were a lot more rosier for me in Nigeria than it was in Canada, because once we got here, it was pretty much downhill. It's crazy. If my father had been around, she might have just been a housewife, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. The absence created opportunity for her. The storm provided conditions for my education and shaped my earliest understanding of resilience. So despite my father not being around, my mom was able to be and demonstrate her the best version of herself. You know, so as I go on with my story and I talk to you about her story, it's so the contrast is different from the woman I knew in Nigeria and the woman that is now in Canada. Night and day. At the age of 10, in Nigeria, I fell ill, very ill, like I was losing consciousness ill. My mother, being the prayer warrior she is, instead of taking me to the hospital, she felt whatever it is that was ailing me, she needed to bring me to the church. So the storm, terrifying as it was, became the catalyst for my mother's decision to bring us to Canada. She expedited our move knowing that life needed to change. Illness forced a pivot again and the storm provided. So like I said, she brought me to the church, and this church, there's no power. So when night falls, it's dark in there. So we were there for like 3 days, and all she did was just pray, and eventually I got better. And I guess the plans were already in works for us to migrate, but the illness, which occurred to me, expedited everything. So like, even leaving Nigeria, she didn't tell me anything. I didn't know I was leaving Nigeria until the night off, that we were leaving to go to the airport. So my mom, on a spiritual level, she knew the power of words. You guys understand how, you guys on social media, you see it where people, they say, hey, don't talk about your plans before they happen, because there's people out there with their bad mind and, you know, and so on and so forth. It's all real, you know. Me coming here, I didn't tell anybody, I didn't talk about it. They're just gonna see the video after. You know what I mean? So these are something I've learned over the years too. You know, you gotta keep your cards close to your chest. Growing up in Canada didn't shield me from hardship. So again, I reunited with my dad. Before I go on, I just wanted to take you back to when I was 4 years old. When I was 4 years old, my dad lived in Montreal at that point. And I guess my mom and I came up here for a visit for like a couple of months. So I remember vividly, even then, the physical abuse. So imagine, this is my first time meeting my father at 4 years old, and he's beating me. So I remember even going back to Nigeria, there was never a time where I was like yearning for a father, because I knew, I was like, that guy hurt me, I don't want to be around him, you know? So, but at the age of 10, I think it was a distant memory, but I remembered it shortly after. So once we migrated here, shortly after, the abuse started. My grade 4 teacher, Mrs. Brahowski, great lady. They don't make teachers like this anymore, you know, like very stern and prim and proper. I remember we used to read Little House on the Prairie. So she would read it to us, and then we'd take turns reading it too. And during the time where she's reading, if you're not paying attention, I know this is probably frowned upon nowadays, she'll grab a little chalk at you. So yeah, Mrs. Orowski was something else. But she noticed that something was amiss with me, and she suspected that I was being abused. So under the guise of me getting disciplined, she suggested to my parents that I join Air Cadets, which would allow me less time at home, more time outside. So that small act of compassion exposed me to something new: travel, teamwork, and camping, which was great for me through Air Cadets. It was a great experience. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Air Cadets. As part of mine was Moss Park Armory, 818 Squadron. Stand up if you're here. So I got a glimpse of a different life. The storm of violence at home, it provided a window, thanks to someone who cared. Although Mrs. Rahowski tried to intervene in her own way, I would eventually end up in children's aid care by the age of 12. So shortly after we moved here, I was in children's aid care. One day, my dad was beating me, and the neighbors called the cop because he was beating me that bad that I was crying. So anyways, the neighbors called the cops, and I guess my dad got arrested, and then I got taken into children's aid. And I think my dad had to complete some stuff, some court mandated things in order for me to come back. And eventually they told me I had to go home, and I cried. I didn't want to go home, but I went. A little about Mrs. Rahowski, by the way. When I was incarcerated, because her husband actually worked at Air Cadets. That's how she's familiar with it. My little brother attended Air Cadets when I was incarcerated, so I wrote Mrs. Rahowski a letter, which I sent it to my brother, and he gave it to her husband, and she wrote me back. So when she wrote me back, I was reminded of how fleeting the times were. She mentioned how she has arthritis. I'm like, arthritis? The lady that throws chalks has arthritis? But yeah, I don't know where she is right now. I hope she's good. I hope I'll never forget her. When my mother had her third child, her mental health began to deteriorate, and eventually my father left again. Because my dad at that point, they had marital problems, so he would come and go. But as her health got worse, he eventually left. So at 16, I became the primary caregiver and provider. At that point, I think I live on Pickering Street. Yeah. Then, yeah, she knows the turf. That storm forced me into a role I didn't ask for, but it laid the foundation for the parent I would later become. Sometimes responsibility comes too early, but it teaches you the weight and worth of showing up. So, the stage I was in exceeded my age. When you're 16, what are you supposed to be doing? Like teenage stuff. I had lots on my plate, lots to think about, from my siblings to my mother to my own, to myself. So I had a lot on my plate at that stage. There's fruits out there that if you eat it too early, you could get sick from eating them, because it's not ripe yet. So when you put children in a position where they're being forced to ripe early, it goes against nature, the organic nature of things. For a while, I thrived, but eventually the pressure of holding everything together started to overwhelm me. I became less present at home, emotionally and physically. I was just trying to survive. And survival can sometimes look like absence. The storm taught me about burnout before I even knew the word. My mother's mental health has become worse. Now it has been compounded by alcohol abuse. My father would pick up my brother and sister every other weekend, but aside from that, there was no support, nothing financially, nothing emotionally. So it was all on me to figure it out. After high school, I worked various kitchen jobs: McDonald's, prep cook, kitchen manager. It kept food on the table, but it also kept me away from home. I wanted more. Maybe post-secondary, but survival trumped dreams. My family needed me to work. The storm of poverty and obligation, it taught me sacrifice, but it also planted the seeds of frustration. So with limited education, my wages hovered around the same. This was, of course, way before the internet, where you could just create a lane out of thin air and just make money, you know? So just, this limitation caused me to explore options that were familiar to me. Eventually, I dipped into the street subculture. Many of my friends have always been in that life. I never sold anything I didn't use, but the path led to a fatal altercation. A young man lost his life. 2 weeks after the altercation, I found myself in a jail cell in the East Detention Center. I was facing life in prison. That moment was the eye of the storm, the point where everything went dark. Fate had finally brought me to a spiritual fork in the road. I was about to go through a metamorphosis that is required for a hero's journey. But the choice was always mine to make. Yeah, guys have to understand, when I called people from jail and I told them I was in jail for murder, they were like, what are you talking about? Because I was never, even dealing with the abuse, I was never a violent person. If you pushed me, yeah, we could go there. But for the most part, I'm happy-go-lucky. So there was a lot of people that were just like taken back, shocked, like, what are you talking about? Even the premises behind the altercation that I had with this person, most of the times when someone dies from an altercation, they know each other. There's a history. People know each other. The person that killed that person, they know each other. But in this circumstance, we didn't know each other at all. We didn't even speak to each other. I don't want to get into the story of it all right now. If you want to, you can go to our YouTube page, 27 Letters podcast. There's a whole story there where I go into details. It's called The Story Before the Story. There's 2 parts to it. But basically, this young man, he just came with a group of people looking to fight somebody. He was drunk. He never even said a word to me. He just pushed me, and then the sequence of events happened. I stabbed him once, and it just so happened that I even had a knife on me that day, because I don't carry a knife. And there's a whole story behind me just having that knife that day. It was, how do you say, divine? But at the same time, it's hard for me to use that word divine because somebody did lose their life, right? But there I was, facing life in prison after getting into altercation with this person I don't even know. No history, no nothing. 6 months into my incarceration, the Crown offered me a deal for 4 years manslaughter. Based on what I went through and what my understanding, my case should have been self-defense. I still stand on that until this day. It should have been self-defense because I was being attacked. I was ready to take the 4-year plea deal. I wanted to be out. As you can, by this time I already had a daughter. She was 1.5 years. So to compound everything, I had my siblings to think about, my mother, then I compounded it with having a child. So it was just 1.5 years when I got incarcerated. And my whole goal, I remember how important the first day of school is. My whole goal was to get off of that first day of school so I could take her to school. But something didn't sit right. The joint synopsis that was submitted to the courts by the Crown and my lawyer, the joint synopsis was full of errors. And I pointed this out to the judge. And sure enough, he heard what I said and was like, "Hey, young man, you got a case for self-defense." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Self-defense, that sounds good. Self-defense, I could be out way sooner." It sparked hope in me. A trial, a real shot. But hope isn't always enough. In 2004, nearly 2 years later, after that fateful evening, I was convicted of second-degree murder, sentenced to life in prison. So yeah, I gambled and I lost. Well, I wish I had that judge for my trial, but that didn't work out. That was in low courts. You have different judges doing the high court stuff. Yes, life without parole for 12 years to be exact. I gambled and lost because of my inexperience with the court system. I remember after I got convicted, there was a guy from an area that I knew, that he was incarcerated, and told him what happened, and he looked at me, and bro, he's like, "Bro, if I saw you before you went to trial, I would have made you take that deal," because he had the experience. It's like, "I would have made you take that deal, because now look." But I had high hopes for a victorious appeal. My years in prison helped me purify my soul. My conviction made me a captive audience for the necessary changes that I needed to make. I'm going to say this a few times. The change that we need to do, to go through, could be violent. Change is violent. You know, change is violent. If you don't believe me, look at a woman having a child. As sacred as that is, it's violent. So, whatever choices you need to make in your life, the necessary choices you need to make, as drastic as it may seem, if it's necessary, it must be done. And me being in prison, being incarcerated, forced me to make changes. By then, my household had disintegrated. So, my mother, at that point, again, her mental health was in shambles. My siblings, to my dad's credit, because they ended up in children's aid for the time being, because I was incarcerated. And children's aid already opened up a file on us in regards to my siblings, because a few years back, me and my girlfriend at the time, we had planned to go to Cuba. So I asked my dad, look after the children for the week, because obviously my mom can't. He put up an argument. I couldn't, like that. It was just ridiculous that he even had to argue with me for that. But eventually took him in for that week. And in that week, my mom, being in her mental health issues and then her compounded with drinking, and so she shows up to school looking for my siblings, because I guess she didn't realize. She's like, "Yo, where are the children?" So she goes to the school, and then this is where to those days got involved regarding my siblings. So when I got incarcerated, they already had a file open up for them. So again, to my dad's credit, he finally stepped up when nobody else could be there for my siblings. My mother ended up in a homeless shelter. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the homeless shelter in Dawes and Danforth. It's by the Canadian Tire. So years back, as a teenager, that used to be an all-ages club. So it's in a full circle. This is called Spectrum. So Spectrum became this shelter now that my mom was living in. So remember, this is a woman in Nigeria, third world country, entrepreneurial. I'm going to private school, and this is where she's at in this first world. When I heard the news, it really crushed me, because I knew I let my mom down. It's one of those things that I still struggle with, just the condition that she's in. She's such a spiritual prayer warrior, dedicated to my father, like, it's crazy. According to her own siblings, according to my mom's own siblings, no man except for my father, I don't know now, but no man has ever seen my mom naked except for my father. So, and then, how does a woman go from being a successful entrepreneur to this? Maybe the better question is, how do the systems, relationship, and life fail a woman like her? I want to touch on my daughter Tatiana for a sec. I was so consumed with looking after my household, because my daughter, she lived with her mother, at that point. But I was so consumed with my household, I was reminded, like, hey, you also have a daughter that you left behind. So that was another loss I had to grieve within itself. When my daughter was born, she was born on New Year's Day, 2001. Me and our mother looked at each other and just said, hey, listen, no matter what happens between us, we won't keep her away from either of us. No, there should have been a fine print that says even in prison too, but nobody knew what the future held. So, being incarcerated and being away from my daughter, again, was another thing I had to grieve. Because family meant the world to me, to have my own children, but I had like a whole foot and half a body, maybe even more than half a body, into looking after my siblings, the household that I dwell in, that I neglected building that relationship, even when she was just a year and a half with my daughter. Eventually, the parental alienation I had to deal with while incarcerated is what really galvanized me to start writing those letters. I was frustrated, and I was sharing that frustration with somebody I was incarcerated with. And I told them, like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the phone system. If you guys remember, you can collect calls. And when I was younger, like, we didn't have cell phones. So, like, if I want my friend to meet me somewhere, I'll literally call him. Like, instead of saying my name, I'm like, I'm at Victoria Park Station, meet me. The whole sentence. This is how we used to do it. So when I got convicted and sentenced to prison, they still had a collect call system in the prisons. So it was hard for me to get calls to my daughter. Come in, guys. These are my children. So these are all the children I've had post-prison. I have 4 children altogether. That's my Empress Lynette, my daughter, Militia, Masai, Morocco. So, yes, family, like raising children was important to me. So not being there for my daughter really hurt me. So again, I was sharing that information with somebody, and he said like, you should start writing her, because I couldn't get through with the phone calls. I remember it was the holidays, close to the holidays, and again I was making a collect call, and instead of saying my name, I was pretty much pleading, like somebody pick up the phone. It's like it's been months since I've spoken to my daughter. So I started writing those letters, and those letters became my message in a bottle. Prison didn't defeat me, it reshaped me. I used that time to step outside myself. I call it remote viewing in 3D. Like looking at your own life as if you were searching for Waldo. You guys been familiar with the book Finding Waldo? Yeah. So the trick is, in order to find Waldo, you can't be in the picture. It's next to impossible. So when you get to a point in your life and you really need to reassess where you're going, you gotta treat it like you're finding Waldo, which is yourself. You gotta remove yourself from the picture. Again, like I said, change can be violent. It can get drastic. My Empress, she moved from Manitoba when it was time for her to make a change. Everybody bet against her, but look at her now. We met shortly after she moved here. So, whenever necessary, get that remote view of your life to see what's going on, where you need to go. Because like I said, it's hard to find Waldo when you're in the picture. You see how crazy those pictures are. Now imagine your life, You've got to take yourself out of the frame to see the full picture. The storm of incarceration provided a space for deep spiritual awakening. It hurt, again, could be violent, but it also healed. And that's the paradox. I'm not here to glorify hardship. I'm here to show you what it can provide if we endure it with reflection and purpose. I've since spoken in classrooms, courtrooms, and communities. I've raised my children with wisdom I never had as a child. I've authored books, launched a podcast, started a vegan cuisine company, all born from the ashes of the storms. Every setback has in some way refined me. Each storm stripped away something, sometimes violently, but it left behind something I could build on. Again, the storm provides. So, I just want to touch on some of the stuff I've been doing since I got out. Actually, I'm going to tell you a story. Everybody has their phone with them. I assume everybody's got Instagram. If you go to 5 Principles Cuisines, number 5, just the number 5 Principles Cuisines. Just keep that in mind. While incarcerated, I had no clue where my mother was. No, like, no one knew. My siblings were living with my father, and they themselves did not inquire or anything like that until I came out. So in 2010, when I won my appeal, it took me a while to get my bearings. So by 2011, that's when we kind of focused the search on finding my mother. Like, what do you mean? Like, you guys don't know where she is. Like, I'm coming out of jail, and you guys don't know. What do you mean you guys don't know where your mom is? It's so weird to me. I'm like, again, their experience, the mother they experience is different from the mother I experienced. So this is why it meant that much to me to find her. I wasn't too familiar with the internet back then, but my sister went on 411.ca because we tried to go to the police, and it seemed like police had information, but they couldn't tell us. So we were like, okay, something we got to do our own digging. So she went to 411.ca and she found a number and an address. Ironically, this address, we drove by the building coming up here. And I was just pointing it out to my Empress, hey, remember that building? So quickly we went, myself, my sister, my Empress, we went to this building, we went to the super's office with the information that we had. Again, because of privacy issue, they didn't give us much to go with. So we went home that night. It was kind of late in the evening. So we went home that night. The very next morning, determined, I was like, I'm just going to stand in front of this building until I see her. Sit here for however long it takes. Like, this is 2011. I haven't seen my mom since 2002, and this is the person that means the world to me. While incarcerated, there are times where I'll be watching the news and they would mention the body of a woman found somewhere, and it always play in my mind. So that very next day, after going to the super's office and they denied us any more information that would, because of privacy issue, we went back the next day, and we're talking to the custodian, the people that clean the building. Her name was Sweetie. I remember the lady's name. Her name was Sweetie. And we're talking about my mom, describing her as best as we could, and say, hey, do you know? She's like, yeah. And we're standing in the lobby. And as we're standing in the lobby, my mom walks into the lobby. So if you go on 5 Principles Cuisines, the second picture at the top is the picture she took when we embraced for the first time in years. Yeah, I don't know how she caught that picture with the chaos, but she caught the picture, and that picture is forever. So we go upstairs after embracing it, after seeing each other for the first time in so many years. She just came from the dollar store, and then she pulls out a name tag that she just bought, and it was my name. If you don't believe me, ask her. She was right there. Yeah. Before I leave, I'm going to close this poem. It's called Abuse. As a child, you should feel safe and loved, with a family that cares like a hand in a glove. But for some, that's not the case, as they live in fear in a dark and lonely space. Abuse can come in many forms: a punch, a slap, or even a scorn. And when it's done by those you trust, it can shatter your world, leave you feeling crushed. A child's mind is fragile and pure. and abuse can leave wounds that will forever endure. The trauma can linger, the pain can last. As the memories haunt them, the scars contrast. Living in fear is a constant battle, like being trapped in a cage with no way to rattle. The feeling of being alone with nowhere to turn is a heavy burden, a fire that will forever burn. The scars may not be visible to the eye, but the damage is real. The pain can't be denied. As the child grows up, the wounds still remain, like a burden that they carry, like a never-ending chain. The love and nurture of a family is vital. For a child to grow, for their dreams to become vital. But when abuse takes over and fear sets in, it can damage a child, and it's a battle they can't win. Thank you guys for having me. I'm going to take some questions now. See, has it.
I have editors to see if they have any questions.
You guys have any questions?
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I should not have taken the microphone yet to give myself 4 seconds. You spoke to the teacher that made a big impact and the CEO that made a big impact. And I guess part question, part statement. One, obviously you've made a big impact in probably everybody in the room by sharing your story. But I'm wondering if there were further supports that were really meaningful for you through that time. That really stood out, whether it was from an organization, whether it was a peer support.
Well, I mentioned like the ladies that came in for Bible studies. There was many of the volunteers, you know, because I was always intrigued about people who are in relationship, couples that have been in a relationship for like years. So oftentimes some of the people that will come, volunteers are couples, and so I have a million questions for them about what it takes to last this long, you know. So yeah, there's another thing. One of the biggest support I got is when I got to Pembroke to go along with the letters I wrote. Like I said, unlike a maximum prison, you have access to more stuff. So in Pembroke, one of the programs that is voluntary that was offered was children's reading program. So basically, a lady by the name of Carla Vitek and Beth would come in with children's book and a recorder. So you get to pick up a children's book and you get to read a bedtime story to your child. So they record it and they send the book and you read in the bedtime story too. Unfortunately, when I came out, those recordings were lost. Our mother, even the letters, it's a good thing I have my own copy. So I don't think, as much as those letters meant something to me in the household my daughter grew up in, for some reason, it wasn't something they cared for, you know. But yeah, so the volunteers that came in, those are the people that were impactful. And again, some of the CEOs too. When I was going from one prison to the next, I mentioned my CO2, his name was Michael Kirkwood. And you have like a PO that looks over your file, and then you have a CO2 that kind of looks at your daily activities. So when I was leaving, he looked at me, he's like, brother, there's something different about you, man. There's just something different about you. And these are the vote of confidence that I got. So, yeah. So it's more individuals than, say, organizations. No problem.
It's not a question, it's just like a reflection or a feedback. Can I share that? I have lived in Nigeria, I lived in Nigeria for almost 20 years.
Wow.
So I can definitely connect whatever you are saying. And especially when you are referring to 1970s, when your mom is there, that time Nigeria has a very, very strong economy. And I can totally understand, like, it must be very difficult, a very difficult decision for your mom to move to Canada, especially when she had a very good career there. I can also relate, I mean, I'm also an immigrant, and I can also relate when people decide about immigration for a very bright future for their children. And that's a very huge, big decision for us as immigrants. And when we come here not knowing the system, and we are just stuck in the system, can't go back, because most of the people, we sell our properties, we sell our assets there, come with dreams of a bright future for our children, and then not knowing the system here, stuck in here, cannot go back. So it's very, very heart-wrenching. I could totally relate whatever you said with each and every word, whatever said. I can just wish the best wishes to you, and I wish like you can give everything to your children what you have lost in your life.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Oh, I can't see you. Thank you so much for coming and speaking today. And I was just wondering if you had brought copies of your books.
Speaking of that, yes, I did, and I think we're going to have a raffle. But if you're interested if you don't get a copy, you can get it off my website, 27letters.com. If you guys remember that, 27letters.com. I have 4 books published now, so I have a revised version of the original 27th Letters. So this one has reflections in it, and then I also did the Timekeeper of Justice, which is loosely based on my life post-prison, which is working with guys that are still incarcerated to help being a liaison for them out here. So I created a story around that. And then going back to the whole the children's books that I was reading to my daughter while I was incarcerated, it was a natural progression for me to start getting into children's writing. So then my last book is already out. It's called Uncle's Monster Truck. It's actually based on my youngest son, and actually both my sons, because one day their uncle left his truck at our house because he had to go to Montreal. And while the truck was at our house, and he was like 4 years old, so it was just a pickup truck, but you know, Ford F-150, but to him it's like a monster truck. So he was like, he wanted to go for a ride in it, so I created a story regarding that. And then I have another one that's about to be published on June 27th. I don't really want to get into it because it's a surprise for somebody. It's based on somebody that's close to me. But it's another children's book that's coming out soon. But yeah, so 27letters.com if you want to purchase the book. Please support.
Okay, I think are we gonna raffle some prizes
Yeah,
first?
yeah, let's go.
All right, let's raffle some prizes. We're gonna do this after. We're not done with Lanre yet. Okay, we're gonna stick around. We're gonna do a couple of.
Thank you.
And some stickers for the kiddos.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, guys. I appreciate it. Appreciate it. Enjoy the